Hello, everyone. There is so much excellent innovation in production sound and the products that we get and that we use every day. It is so tempting to dive into these things. And how many times have you put something new in a cart just to kind of figure out, well, how much would it be to upgrade? And what do I have to sell? And should I sell? And is the timing right? And all of those things. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So we'll go ahead and get started. Capturing clean, quality dialogue in vehicles on a film set is one of the most challenging and rewarding processes, and productions continue to push the boundaries of what's possible. This is why I created Recording Dialogue in Cars, a one-stop masterclass for every member of the production sound team. In this course, I'll break down all of today's terminology. We'll cover microphones and rigging, discuss how to navigate complex camera setups, and how to achieve reliable RF performance in the most challenging environments. Come enroll into Recording Dialogue in Cars today at mwsound.net, and I'll see you soon. Just like I want to say, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about what goes into a basic sound kit. And just kind of if you're starting out and what would put in there. So thanks everyone for who tuned into that. And now we're talking about kind of what happens later on. So, you get a kit built, you're working, things are going well for you. And, your favorite manufacturer of wireless or recorders or whatever it is announces the brand new thing. And that's what we're here to talk about, is navigating that today. And I can tell you that, throughout my career, gear has been the gear lust has been through the roof. And I have bought into many different types of systems. I've sold many types of things and have kind of been sometimes all over the place, but sometimes also very calculated. So that's the conversation that we're going to have today, is talk about when is the right time to upgrade, and when we do upgrade in our specific scenarios, because obviously each of us are doing maybe different varying type of workflows and situations. And when we upgrade, should we sell the existing equipment that we have? Meaning that should we get our investment out of that equipment so we could then apply it to the new gear? And how does that look for a backup and redundancy? Because if we're not rolling all of these conversations into their, ROI, is it a good time to upgrade? What about redundancy? And how does this look from a whole system? Then we're not looking at the big picture. So we'll start right here where, this is, let's say, a basic sound package that actually operates as a backup for me. And that doesn't mean I wouldn't use it as a primary if the right situation came about. But if I was starting from here, hypothetically speaking, with this bag, and I wanted to say upgrade to something that has more capabilities, such as more channels of wireless, because this one here has 2 channels with the 822 here, and maybe we need 4 channels. And which way do I go? How do I do it? And do I sell this here and get the investment out of it in order to go into that next system? And then what does that look like for my workflow? So first and foremost, I want to start the conversation with probably the primary thing that you need to be thinking about if you're starting out new in production sound is redundancy. So what that means is okay, you have enough money, you've worked hard, you've saved up, and you've assembled a really nice kit, here like a MixPre 3 822, and you got some time code in here with the Betso TCX2, you got a distro for power, you got everything you need, including a breakout cable. Check out my little Cinema Audio Society pin there. But including a breakout cable that will send out context. And speaking of context, we've got a transmitter in here. And everything we need just kind of for a small ENG package, whether we want to send out a public line with contact or send out a wireless hop to a camera. record a boom in a couple channels. And that's a lot of power. So if I wanted to upgrade, like I keep getting all these requests for, say, 4 channels, you're going to have 4 talent here, and you go, oh man, then I got to somehow rent another system. Or if it keeps coming up for you, that means usually it's time to expand on that. So the first thing we want to consider is, what is the backup scenario? So without even getting into a big conversation about what it is, it's my belief and my experience that you should never sell an existing kit if it's the only kit you have to upgrade to another kit. Because when you start building your career and you start building your production sound workflow, you need to have a built-in level of redundancy. And that is what I do today. So I'll segue over to a second package, which is right back here, and talk about how these two work together. So let me grab it. So when I use this package, because there's many layers for me. So this is a Sound Devices 833. Let's power it on, and then So this is my SD833, and on here I've got 4 channels of wireless ready to go. The 833, a hardline boom here, because typically I would then carry this rig, and a Comtech transmitter plus time code, kind of all the same things that you saw in the other package, which is kind of hiding right over here. I won't be able to get both on camera, ready to go. So in the unlikely event, but possible event, that this system goes down for whatever reason, and it could be as simple as a cable. One power cable, your one power connection away from things not working, and then you're in the hot seat, right? So I say that not to put any weird mojo out there, but just to say, a long time ago, when I first started in sound, over 20 something years ago, an engineer said to me, he said, you don't get paid, you get paid when things don't work. And that kind of stuck with me, and I like that. What it means is that as production sound mixers, audio engineers, we get paid to solve problems and make things work. So the redundancy aspect that you want to think about here. So when you're able to build into a kit like this, a really powerful and high-end production sound mixer recorder with wireless, this is the Electrosonics DSR4, and all this stuff, I need to have a plan to go to the redundancy rig. So we can get that part of the conversation right out of the way here on the stream, just to keep things very simple and very clear, because I just don't think it's up to negotiation. So this kit here, if I'm starting here, okay, there's no way that I want to sell this if I can say, oh, well, I could sell this, and then I could get this amount of money because I'm experiencing gear lust, right? It happens. Like, oh man, I'm really tired of this wireless, so I want to get into this system because it's really cool because I saw somebody on Instagram with it, so that means it must be good. And, and then we end up making a rash decision to sell all this, to take the money, to get into this, only to find out that now we're kind of in this similar situation of not having any sort of redundancy built into play. And I understand that if you're new, redundancy takes time. Speaking of redundancy, another conversation I want to have. So obviously we want to have a backup. Don't sell your primary kit to invest into another kit prematurely. It costs money to be a production mixer. There's going to be investment. No pain, no gain. You want to make sure you have a built-in backup. But there's other levels. So a mixer many, many years ago said you're only as good as one in the truck, or something like that. And what that breaks down to is that, okay, yeah, so some people when they're doing backups is they'll say, oh, well, I have a backup recorder, right? I've got a second Kantar to my Kantar, for instance, and it's in the truck. So if my Kantar goes down, then I'm good because I can just grab the other one and put it on the sound card. But the truth is redundancy is only good as full redundancy is concerned, because there is much more going on than a mixer recorder in your workflow. There's power, right? There's cabling, all of the cabling that goes into it. There's RF. There's your receivers, right? There's the recorder mixer. There's the ComTech. And I don't know at what moment or at what thing is going to need maybe a service. Maybe the cable is stressed and the connector is gone bad on the distribution cable going to power my bag. What happens if that happens? Well, we know the answer is what happens is nothing works, right? And you're there on the day and nothing is working. So the redundant plan for this particular bag is this one. Now you might say or think, and because I'm thinking it too, well, what if you got 4 channels? That's not really a backup. True. So that means that, well, if I've only got 2 channels here as a backup, then that means if the wireless goes down in the primary system, then I'm going to be left with 2 channels. But 2 is better than none. And you can make things work if you absolutely need to. Also, components can be interchangeable. So if this bag has, say, 2 wires, it's the MixPre 3 here, but it's got 2 wires and I got 3 wireless, and the primary system goes down, then this particular system in the other bag is fully modular to go towards the other one, meaning that this can be pulled out here to work into this, providing you have your cabling and everything ready to go. So the ability to swap back and forth to pull a component on something to another thing is also a thing. So you're not always grabbing the whole other system. Sometimes you're grabbing a piece of the other system. But if there's not time, sometimes you just have to grab the whole other system and be ready to go. So I will never load in one sound bag to any job ever without having a layer of redundancy, ever. Because I need it to work no matter what. And if that's the only thing you get out of this stream, then it has been a successful one for you. So let's talk about the next thing, and I'm going to leave both these bags here for this one. The next layer, okay, so obviously have a backup. It can be modular. Things can go back and forth. Okay, Michael, I know all that stuff. Okay, great. Now let's talk about brand lust. Okay, what is brand lust? Okay, so I can pick on myself for a second. So I used Electrosonics wireless, intentionally so. I could have purchased any brand that I wanted. I've had enough work and enough budget for equipment to be able to go into any system that I choose. And I chose that for a lot of reasons, which is outside of the scope of this particular stream. But sometimes I'll look at another brand, say Sound Devices wireless, right? And I'll see that it has all these really cool things that my wireless doesn't have. And I think to myself, wow, I would love to have Bluetooth this, or be able to change the frequency remotely or whatever, or transmit and record. That's, Sound Device doesn't do that. But anyway, there's something about it that I like, right? So what the second part of the equation is, I don't want to then go buy a Sound Devices receiver for my upgrade. When you choose a wireless system, especially when you get into a system, you don't want to start to combining multiple brands as a general rule. Because if you do that, then your transmitters that are on your talent, let's say, when you need to change this out, aren't going to work. Because then you're in a system. And it may sound like common sense, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen posts on social media from mixers who start getting into other brands, and then they got one brand here, the other brand here, and that might work for them. I'm not here to judge that, but for my particular workflow, I need to make sure I have redundancy across compatibility and brands, so I'm not pulling transmitters off talents to be able to integrate a workflow system. That's just my personal way to work. I don't like to mismatch, even when I have the brand lust. Like, man, it would be really cool if I had this. But the other part of that conversation is you might be getting out of one system and getting into the other system, which we should talk about. So you might be experienced at this. You might say, yeah, I know. I've got backups and I've got redundancy to what I do. I think that, we'll end this particular part on, well, do you have a full redundancy across power, across wireless, across recorder, the full deal? And generally speaking, I've always done redundancy with second systems, meaning that a lot of times my redundant packages, they never sit in a case on a truck, trailer, or van. They're always working and doing a function because I use a more modular workflow with all the equipment, and I like to keep things built and working rather than thinking on one primary system and I'm just going to pull pieces out and put it in and out, which could work for some workflows. But the type of work I'm doing is very diverse, and it requires a lot of configuration and build outs per project that I'm working with. So this kind of works for me particularly in that arena. So let's talk about, so you might have thought to yourself, well, Michael, when you started the stream, you spoke about buying and selling, and so I have done a lot of buying and selling when building a production sound package. I want to first say that I've been working in production sound. I think I did my first production sound gig in 2004. So that'd be 21 years of buying and selling equipment and going through all the generations. And some of the original pieces I still have. So that being said, there is a certain point with, like, let's say wireless, for instance, where you might want to consider getting out of a legacy system and getting into something that is more capable. And those capabilities for me, and this is really when we get into personal workflow, come down to modularity. Was a big primary key component with build outs for me in the last 3 to 5 years, making sure everything I use could be modularly configured and floated from one system to the next. So upgrading and getting rid of some of the clunky rack mount designs that could float and or be reconfigurable on multiple systems was necessary for me. Even though I still use rack mount systems for receivers in my primary cart, I have redundancy, full redundancy, also in all of the bags on one primary system. So what that means is the last time I sold a bulk of the digital hybrid wireless. And I knew that I wanted to be digital. I had tested all of the systems, and I landed on the Electrosonics digital because of the robustness, range, and primarily because of the backwards compatible with the digital hybrid. Meaning that these receivers here, for me, allowed me to use my digital hybrid transmitters that I needed for higher power, long range FM transmission, whether it's vehicle to vehicle, VOG, stuff like that. I can use all of those really powerful tools, wireless to video assists. If you're new to production sound, or maybe, and all this is like, what are you talking about? Just kind of, know that as you grow and expand your package, you don't want to like say, oh, you know what? I really like what this brand's doing, so I'm going to buy 2 of these. I'm going to buy 2 of those. Because when you get the kind of job that says, hey, we've got 8 different cameras, we've got a video assist, DIT, we need wireless feeds to those, we need 3 VOGs for 2 ADs, 1 for the director, and we also need to do comm systems for crew, camera, make all that work, and then you've got bits and pieces from other brands, or you're working in an ecosystem that doesn't have The depth of product is another thing. There's a lot of brand new technologies out there that are great, but they don't have a developed ecosystem, meaning that you don't see things such as receivers that have a profile that will go on cameras, battery-powered receivers that are using functional batteries that can be placed on desktops of DITs. All these kind of things that I just want to openly share with you guys that really you need to think about when using a system. Now, if you're saying, hey, I don't do any modular work and everything I do is just in one bag and all I will ever do is interviews and one person with a lav talking on camera, then it doesn't apply to you, that particular scenario. You don't need the depth of product. But know that as you get into your career in decades, you will evolve. And what's interesting to me is some of the equipment that I bought very early on in my career, such as the 411As and the SMQVs, I still have. And I've had them all rebuilt, by the way. And I keep them in what I call like a wild wireless case. It's my problem solver case, and I use this stuff all the time. But that was like a small percentage of the bulk that I sold to reinvest here into the digital systems, which I wanted the wider footprint. The digital wireless that I use is 470 to 608. That's 138 megahertz of tuning space. I don't have to use narrow 28 megahertz filters, make things fit. And that works for me. So we can get deep into this stuff, but I think the primary goals, and then we'll get into some of the comments and let you guys have a chance to chime in here on the stream, and is that make sure you don't sell a primary system for gear lust to get an upgrade system and not have a backup. You always need full redundancy on all levels at all times. Okay. The second thing is don't change brands for gear lust. Change brands because, well, maybe because you have a lot of money and you want to spend a lot of money and you're willing to sell off a bunch of equipment to get a bunch of equipment. Listen, if you can get the ROI and get into a new system, there is a time to do that. I did that with Digital Hybrid to get into Electrosonics Digital, and it worked out because I knew the timing was key to do it, and it was the right move at the right time. So I also tried to step into another brand, and it wasn't that it wasn't great. It was amazing. The technology, it was super cool. I loved it. But trying to have two ecosystems living together from a workflow standpoint was creating confusion within the sound department. It was not good. And some of these extra features and layers weren't really applicable to the core of what matters, which is going to be, as far as robustness, practicality as far as battery life is concerned, things that make things work on a film set. And that just comes through time and experience. And man, sure, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. So I'm curious what your workflow is and what your thoughts are on upgrading. Do you upgrade often? And if you're looking in purchasing your first system, are you looking at a system that is going to grow with you in your career? Okay. Not every brand and not every, when I started out, there was Electrosonics and Zaxcom. You chose which path you were going to do because there was, of course, other wireless on the market before then and 20 years before that. I mean, but these were the two industry standards for television and film, and you would go one direction or the other direction. So now we've got this, everybody's in the game, right? We've got more choices than you could think of, and it's awesome, right? That we have all of these possible avenues to go. So when you do invest in a system to start out, point in being, if you want the best ROI out of that, make sure that you're investing in a system that you can grow with. Because selling off that system and then purchasing another brand because it was short-sighted as far as your decision-making was concerned, and by the way, I'm guilty of that. I've done that. I've lost money doing that. That's how I've learned the lessons the hard way. It's going to burn you. So, use what you know, use what you trust, use what other professionals, get advice when going into a system, and make sure that advice isn't from an Instagram reel. Get with other production sound professionals, talk to the manufacturers, but also talk to your peers who are doing the things that you want to do and have real conversations, who aren't in the pockets of the manufacturers. So enough said about that. Speaking of, I want to say thanks everyone for being here. We'll get into the comments here in just a moment. And let's go here. Michael, what better redundancy then Zascom mixer recorder fails, but the transmitters keep recording? Yeah, see, that's a great feature of the Zascom system. And that's also a great point. Having the transmitters continuously record if your mixer goes down is great. So that's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up. And then we've got here, but then again, this is Zascom, a frowning face. Well, I've demoed the Zascom stuff. I demoed the Nova, the MRX14. I thought the design, build quality was just phenomenal. I thought it was very, very good. But for me, it was just to check it out, to educate myself and to kind of compare it to what I was using. And I'm not going to get into that specifically performance-wise. But I will say that selling off a large inventory of a system that is highly functional and highly adaptable just to get into another brand makes no sense for me. So that's what's going on with that. So I think unless anyone else has comments here, put them below if you weren't here for the live stream. And we're going to start wrapping this up. So just, make sure if you're new, have a backup plan. Invest carefully. There's a lot of options out there that aren't going to go for the long term for you. If it's too good to be true price-wise, that means that it's probably junk. And then other than that, talk to other professionals. Most of the top brands, and we all know who they are all making quality equipment. But they cater to different markets. That's what we need to think of. We need to ask ourselves, is this manufacturer more invested into a live market, or are they more embedded into the film and television market? What is the service like coming from them? Can I get this stuff repaired in the area that I live or the country that I live in? What's the turnaround times for that? If I need to expand or rent some equipment or actually work within that particular ecosystem, is that stuff available? Those are the kind of questions that I ask myself. But don't forget also to have some fun along the way, because let's face it, new gear is shiny and new and it can be fun, but there's a business side to this. And for those of you who are working on this professionally and have done this for decades, understand that there's got to be an ROI, and this stuff has got to work for the workflows that we do. So I think that gets us to where we need to be. It was so great to spend some time with you guys. We'll put a couple comments here on the screen before we wrap up. Dan Newburn, now that I know your other YouTube handle, says, you hit every point I've considered as I look to expand my kit. I have one system I like and one I could afford when I started. I have to decide if I'll continue with that system or change early. Yeah, I mean, it's everybody's, thank you for sharing that, Dan. It's everybody's position is going to be different as far as because if you bought 2 channels of wireless, that's not your situation, Dan, but obviously if someone bought 2 channels of wireless like 10 years ago and it was whatever brand and you're not really invested in it because you've been kind of growing slowly, that's kind of like starting out fresh. But that system, as we talked about, could be the backup system. And it looks like we've got one more comment here before we wrap things up from Ben. I now have an 833, 633, mixed pre 10 and 3 debating should I sell my 633. Yeah, Ben, I sold my 633. And if you're looking for feedback, and by the way, I love that profile picture too. It looks really cool. The 833, the mixed pre 10, I don't see any reason why it couldn't be a backup for the 833 all day long. As you can see, I've got a mixed pre 3. Now, what I'm not showing here, Ben, is I also have mixed pre 6. So I've got other tools to kind of configure, but that's an excellent example of a professional, Ben, who's thought through this and who has the proper redundancy in place. So thanks so much for the comment here. So I think we're going to close it up unless there's any other comments. I want to say thank you, everyone, for being here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet, and make sure you hit the bell with the notifications tab. And I'm going to go ahead and get going and get the other things I got to get done today. Thanks so much, everyone, for being here, and we'll see everybody soon. The key to a great sounding lob is 10% placement and 90% process.
Typically, I'll do a script breakdown on my iPad. Ingenuity and flexibility really are the keys here because we have the same goal, capturing the performance.
It is this process here that inspired us to create Wire Like the Pros, a masterclass for students and professionals who have the desire to excel and go beyond just the wiring technique and tools.
Let's talk about working with the actors.
So I invite you to come over now and enroll into Wire Like the Pros at mwsound.net.